seen some super cool topiaries online with moss and succulents, and I thought that it would be really cool and also a whole lot cheaper if I could make one myself. I used a really thick gauge wire that I just got at Home Depot, and I just got the thickest one they had, making sure that it was still pliable, and I just used pliers to bend it around in the shape of a bird, and I'm going to cover that wire frame with chicken wire so that I can hold in my moss. Right now, I'm just trimming off a piece of chicken wire so that I can get started, and it might be helpful if you're doing this at home to wear gloves because this wire that I used and then also the chicken wire can be super pokey. That's why I'm folding up the edges of the chicken wire right here, so when I'm working with it, it's not stabbing my fingers the whole time. I used my bird's face as the starting point, and I'm just wrapping the chicken wire around the existing frame and using that existing frame to kind of tie off each of my pieces of chicken wire, wrapping the edge of the chicken wire around the frame that is beneath. Once I was happy with the frame, I went ahead and got my sheet moss, and this is just a package that I got for around $6 at Home Depot. It's nothing fancy. I opened up my package and went ahead and started applying the sheet moss to my frame. Now at first I started by trying to stick the sheets of moss into the frame, but then I realized that it was easier to just poke the moss from the outside into the holes in the chicken wire. Once my form was completely covered in sheet moss, I went ahead and got my succulents ready. For this, I'm using a jade plant that I got at Home Depot in the hanging plant section for about $12, and then also some pups left over from my aloe vera. I'm just cutting off the stems of each jade plant section that I want to use, removing any lower leaves and sticking the cutting directly into the sheet moss. Succulents don't require a lot of nutrients, so you don't even have to put them in soil. In fact, succulent potting mix and cactus mix is mostly sand, so because of that, I'm just nestling my stems down into the moss and they will root from there. If you're using succulents or cuttings from the store, no matter what kind of succulent that you use, if you just remove the lower leaves and stick the stem into the soil, or in my case sheet moss, it will grow roots. It's important to not let those nodes and cut places get too moist, so I like to let them dry out a little bit before I water for the first time. My goal with this is probably to just water it in the sink. I think I'll just try to mist it with my faucet and just make sure that I get the succulents a little bit moist. I think I'll water it every couple of weeks or so, just kind of see how it's going. But I'll wait at least a week for the cuttings to harden off, to dry up a little bit before I water it the first time. If you're having a hard time getting your cuttings to stick in your sheet moss, you could also hot glue them in place, and I've seen people do that and it works totally fine, and the roots will just grow around that hot glue, so it's no issue to the plant. So if you're struggling with your sheet moss and succulents, just go ahead and hot glue those in place, but because I have chicken wire underneath mine, I'm just putting my succulents into those holes left by my chicken wire. After I used all of the jade plant that I wanted to, I went ahead and got my aloe vera pups and started placing those as well. My goal here is to put my succulents and aloe at the back of my bird so that he keeps his shape. I don't want to put any up by his neck or face because then I think you'd kind of lose what he is. So I'm just kind of moving my jade around so that I can add in my aloe and make sure that it's where I want it to be. These aloe plants are a little bit discolored because they have gotten quite a bit of sun and not enough water, but they'll get back to normal here soon. I have a couple different kinds, and again, these are just cuttings from my plant that I have. Now, what for you took about 8 minutes to watch is taking me a really long time in real life. If I make another one of these succulent moss animals, I think I might try something like a rabbit or something that has its feet on the ground. I really liked the idea of doing a bird because it's kind of up high on its legs, but I wasn't quite sure about the feet and how to make it balance, so I made a stand for it, and I didn't really love how that looked. So you'll notice in the end, in my final photo, that I kind of wrapped a cloth around it so that you can't see the feet. I think it would be a lot easier to make something that is kind of on the ground. And if I make another one of these animals, maybe I'll film the process of creating the wire frame as well. But I went ahead and kind of sped this up for you guys so that you can see the final product without taking hours like it took me.